Frank Zane is a name that echoes among the greatest icons of bodybuilding, but his story goes way beyond stages and trophies. Born on June 28, 1942, in the small town of Kingston, Pennsylvania, he grew up far from the spotlight, in a modest, working-class reality. Who would have guessed that this shy kid from a mining community would one day become a worldwide symbol of aesthetic bodybuilding? From early on, his path showed signs of discipline and dedication, values that would follow him for life. Zane's childhood couldn't have been further from the glamour of bodybuilding. Growing up in a tough coal mining town in Pennsylvania, his days were shaped by a simple routine and everyday challenges that toughened his character. Reserved and quiet, he hardly looked like someone destined to be a global icon. But it was precisely in that environment of limitations that he found the motivation to chase something bigger, something that could completely transform his life. The turning point came at age 14, almost by accident. One day in class, Frank spotted a bodybuilding magazine tossed in the trash. That seemingly random moment changed everything. He was fascinated by the photos of sculpted physiques and decided he wanted to build something like that for himself. That was his very first contact with a world that had seemed totally out of reach for a skinny teenager from a small town. Without access to modern gyms or fancy equipment, Zane started small. He bought a pair of light dumbbells and trained at home, adding sessions at the local YMCA whenever he could. The results came fast. Within just a few years, he jumped from about 130 pounds, 59 kilograms, to 160 pounds, 73 kilograms, a huge leap for his age. What started as teenage curiosity quickly turned into a passion that would define his youth. Not everyone was impressed, though. His father thought lifting weights was a waste of time and insisted Frank should stick to chores. "You'd get stronger cutting the grass," he used to say. But instead of discouraging him, that lack of support only fueled Zane's determination. He wanted to prove that bodybuilding wasn't a pointless hobby. It was a legitimate path to discipline, health, and self-improvement. In the end, the results spoke for themselves. As his physique transformed, so did his parents' attitude. His mother, especially, began encouraging him, realizing that bodybuilding was not only reshaping his body, but also boosting his confidence and discipline. That support gave Frank the foundation he needed to keep chasing his goals. His success wasn't limited to the gym. Zane was a strong student and graduated near the top of his high school class, earning scholarships that took him to Wilkes University. There, in 1964, he earned a degree in science, blending his love for bodybuilding with academics. That balance between body and mind would become one of his trademarks. One thing that really set Frank Zane apart from other bodybuilders was his academic drive. In 1964, he finished his bachelor's in science at Wilkes University, a reflection of his discipline both in study and training. For him, education was as important as muscle, and this mix of intelligence and dedication shaped his journey. While many saw only the physique, Zane was also sharpening his mind. And he didn't stop there. In 1977, already competing at the highest level, he earned a bachelor's degree in psychology from California State University. That choice showed his curiosity to understand not only the body, but also the mind. For Zane, success in bodybuilding wasn't just about brute strength. It demanded focus, mental discipline, and emotional control. In the 1990s, he took it even further, completing a master's in experimental psychology, again at California State. Diving deep into human behavior reinforced his view that bodybuilding could be seen as a science, blending biology, psychology, and philosophy of life. Zane wasn't just lifting weights. He was studying the very processes behind human development. Along the way, he also worked as a math and chemistry teacher in schools across Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Florida, and California. Balancing the classroom with intense training and competition schedules required almost military-level discipline. But for him, teaching was also a way to keep learning. His connection with students kept him motivated and grounded, proving it was possible to nurture both intellect and physique at the same time. That balance between science and sport was the backbone of Zane's entire philosophy. Unlike many athletes of his era, who relied purely on trial and error, Zane brought almost a lab-like mindset to bodybuilding. No wonder he earned the nickname the chemist. He used his academic background to test training methods, diets, and supplementation, always tweaking and refining in pursuit of optimal results. Over time, His education gave him not only knowledge but also credibility. Zane wasn't just seen as another bodybuilder. He was someone who could actually explain what he was doing and why it worked. That scientific approach turned him into a reference point, both inside and outside the sport. And here's some food for thought. How many world-class athletes can balance that kind of academic dedication with a pro career at the highest level? Zane proved that brains and brawn don't just coexist. They often hold the secret to a lasting legacy. On the competitive side, Frank Zane's career is a masterclass in perseverance. He started competing back in the 1960s, picking up titles like Mr. Keystone and Mr. Sunshine State. Those early wins gave him confidence and revealed his edge. He didn't dominate with sheer size, but with proportion and harmony. It was the start of a quiet revolution that would change bodybuilding forever. As the years went on, Zane climbed into bigger and bigger contests. Among his standout achievements were his Mr. America victories, 3 in a row in 1966, 1967, and 1968. That streak solidified his reputation as a disciplined, high-level competitor whose stage presence turned posing into living art. He also left his mark on Mr. Universe, winning the title multiple times between 1965 and 1972. Each win underscored his aesthetic dominance and proved his philosophy, less mass, more proportion, could beat the biggest monsters in the game. In fact, in 1968, he made history by defeating none other than Arnold Schwarzenegger at the Mr. Universe. That upset secured his place among the legends. In 1969, Zane added the Mr. World crown to his resume, building an international reputation. But it was in the late 70s that he reached the pinnacle. From 1977 to 1979, he won Mr. Olympia 3 years in a row, the most prestigious title in bodybuilding. And here's the kicker. He did it weighing under 200 pounds, about 90 kilograms, while rivals often outweighed him by 20 to 30 pounds. His secret wasn't size, it was aesthetics. Zane's trademark was his razor-thin waist and the legendary vacuum pose, where he'd pull his abs completely inward, creating a jaw-dropping look of symmetry and control. That move became his signature and is still remembered today as one of the most iconic poses in bodybuilding history. His Olympia reign sparked a cultural shift in the sport. For the first time, the spotlight wasn't on who had the most muscle mass, but on beauty of lines, balance, and proportion. Many still consider this period the peak of bodybuilding's golden era, when aesthetics mattered just as much as brute strength. Frank Zane's competitive legacy proved that in a world of giants, refinement and discipline could speak louder than raw size. What truly set him apart, though, was his training philosophy. While most athletes chased extreme bulk, Zane swam against the current. His mission was aesthetics, proportion, and symmetry. He believed the human body should be sculpted like a work of art, where every line and curve had to flow in harmony. That almost artistic vision is what crowned him the king of aesthetics. And contrary to what many assume, Zane wasn't obsessed with lifting the heaviest weights possible. His workouts focused on moderate loads, executed with laser-sharp precision and control. To him, it wasn't about how heavy the bar was. It was about how effectively the muscle was stimulated. Every rep had intent, every set had purpose, and that meticulous approach set him apart from the rest. One of the cornerstones of Zane's method was what he called the mind-muscle connection. For him, training wasn't just about moving weights around. It was about being fully aware of every contraction, every fiber working. This mental approach turned workouts into almost a meditative practice, where body and mind came together to chase peak performance. That philosophy is still a reference point today for athletes who value quality over sheer volume. When it came to nutrition, Zane was just as meticulous. His daily intake rarely went above 3,000 calories, even during prep for major contests. He kept protein high quality, fats healthy, and carbs tightly controlled. This strategy was key to maintaining his signature tight waist without sacrificing the sharp definition that made him stand out on stage. Another thing that set him apart was the emphasis he placed on pre-workout meals. While most lifters back then focused almost exclusively on post-workout recovery, Zane believed fueling before training was just as crucial for energy, performance, and even recovery itself. That was the moment he fine-tuned his nutrition to squeeze the most out of each session. His nickname, the Chemist, didn't come by chance. Beyond his academic background, Zane was a real pioneer in smart supplementation. He experimented with amino acids, vitamins, and minerals long before the sports nutrition boom of the 80s and 90s. He treated supplementation like science, always with discipline and moderation, aiming to enhance performance without overdoing it. This lifestyle made him a model of balance, disciplined in training, careful with diet, and focused on mental strength. More than muscles, Frank Zane preached harmony between body and spirit. But even an athlete as disciplined as Zane wasn't immune to life's curveballs. In 1980, while prepping for another Mr. Olympia title, he had a serious accident at home. He slipped by his pool and, besides the scare, lost about 15 pounds, 7 kilograms, of muscle in a very short time. He still chose to compete, but his performance took a hit. He finished third, behind Arnold Schwarzenegger and Chris Dickerson. That result sparked one of bodybuilding's most heated controversies. Arnold's comeback win that year was considered unfair by many, Zane included, who felt blindsided by his rival's sudden return. The uproar was so strong that in 1981 Zane boycotted the Mr. Olympia in protest, showing he wouldn't compromise his principles, even on the sport's biggest stage. Things got worse in 1983 when another accident reshaped his career. During a bike ride, he suffered a bad crash that left him with severe shoulder injuries. Despite the pain, he still stepped on the Olympia stage that year, finishing fourth. Soon after, he underwent major surgery, and it became clear that this was the end of his competitive road. His official retirement came after the 1983 Olympia. By then, he had spent over 20 years competing, years filled with titles, innovation, and resilience. Zane didn't let accidents define him, but they did set the physical limits that forced him to step away from the stage. Even so, his career was already cemented in history. Few athletes have ever won as many prestigious contests, toppled giants, and, more importantly, changed the judging standards of an entire sport. He walked away as a 3-time Mr. Olympia, multiple-time Mr. Universe and Mr. America, and countless other accolades that built his legacy. Ironically, those accidents didn't push him away from bodybuilding. They pushed him toward teaching, writing, and inspiring others. His exit from competition became the opening for a whole new chapter, one where he dedicated himself to sharing everything he had learned with the world. Frank Zane's life wasn't shaped only in gyms, classrooms, or on competition stages. In 1966, he met Christine, the woman who would become his partner in life and in sport. They crossed paths in Florida when Frank was still teaching at a school while beginning to rise as a competitor. A year later, in 1967, they married, joining not only hearts but also dreams and goals. Christine wasn't just a wife watching from the sidelines. She stepped into the world of pageants and bodybuilding herself, winning her own titles. Her biggest highlight came in 1970, when she won the Miss Universe Bikini crown, proving that aesthetics and discipline were shared values in their relationship. That victory made Christine an inspiring figure in her own right, standing proudly next to Frank. More than just sharing their personal lives, Frank and Christine also built projects together. One of the most notable was Zane Haven, launched in Palm Springs in 1980. The place functioned as a retreat where people from all over the world could dive into the bodybuilding lifestyle. It offered weekend programs focused on health, fitness, and balance, a space where body and mind were trained side by side. Over time, Zane Haven evolved into the Zane Experience, an even more comprehensive concept. The idea was to bring training, nutrition, and overall well-being into one unified system, always under Frank and Christine's philosophy of discipline and harmony. For them, bodybuilding was never just about muscle. It was a lifestyle built on aesthetics, health, and self-knowledge. While Frank centered his energy on the athletic side, Christine carved out her own strong academic and artistic path. She studied arts, later graduated in psychology, and devoted herself to teaching, inspiring new generations. On top of that, she continued creating art, paintings, sculptures, even jewelry, proving her creative versatility. Their partnership was a rare example of two people truly elevating each other. While Frank carried bodybuilding into the competitive and educational spheres, Christine expanded their philosophy through art, education, and her own achievements. Together, They built a brand that outlived contests and trophies. After retiring from competition, Frank Zane could easily have faded into the background. Instead, he took a different route and became one of the greatest ambassadors of aesthetic bodybuilding. A big part of his legacy came through his writing. Zane authored several books that covered not just training and nutrition, but also the mental side of bodybuilding. He believed the mind was just as important as the muscle, and that true excellence came when the two worked in harmony. One of the most forward-thinking aspects of his approach was blending meditation, psychology, and science with sport. Long before it became mainstream, Zane was already teaching that mental balance improved physical performance. That unique vision only reinforced his nickname, the chemist, because he treated bodybuilding almost like a formula, carefully calculating training, diet, and mindset to reach the ideal outcome. Among his biggest post-career projects was the Zane Experience, which provided one-on-one coaching for athletes and enthusiasts who wanted to master the secrets of symmetry and aesthetics. More than just workouts, participants received a complete program covering nutrition, posture, mindset, and self-awareness. It was Zane's philosophy delivered directly to those eager to transform both body and mind. Another milestone was the founding of the Zane Gallery in Laguna Beach, where bodybuilding was celebrated not only as sport, but as art. Photos, paintings, and historical records highlighted the beauty of the physiques that defined the so-called golden era. The gallery became a hub for those who saw bodybuilding not just as performance, but as artistic expression. Recognition for his life's work didn't take long. In 2003, Zane received the Arnold Schwarzenegger Lifetime Achievement Award, given to individuals who left a lasting mark on the sport. Accepting the honor from Arnold, his longtime rival, was the ultimate sign of respect and admiration earned over decades. He also stayed active in documentaries, seminars, and international events. His appearances in films like Challenging Impossibility and other projects kept his influence alive, bridging the gap between modern audiences and the roots of classic bodybuilding. Always open to sharing his knowledge, he became a true reference point for athletes across generations. All of this shows that Zane's retirement wasn't really an ending, it was a transition. Frank Zane's legacy is one of those that truly transcends generations. He's remembered as one of the very few athletes who managed to beat Arnold Schwarzenegger in an official contest, a feat that alone cements his place in history. But his greatest victory wasn't just over rivals. It was over the mindset that ruled bodybuilding at the time, which valued size above everything else. Zane proved that aesthetics, symmetry, and proportion could be just as powerful as sheer mass. That's why he's still called the father of aesthetics in bodybuilding. His physique was often compared to classical sculptures, inspiring athletes, judges, and fans to rethink what physical perfection really meant. He didn't just win titles. He changed the way the sport itself was judged, placing beauty of lines and balance at the center of the conversation. Decades later, his influence became crystal clear with the creation of the classic physique division, designed to bring back the very ideals Zane stood for. Athletes in this category chased the same standard he embodied: proportionate bodies, narrow waists, artistic poses, and harmonic aesthetics. In a way, Zane's essence still lives on in every new competition. The official recognition came in style too. In 1994, he was inducted into the Joe Weider Hall of Fame, and in 1999, into the IFBB Hall of Fame, sealing his name among the all-time greats. These honors celebrated not just his onstage success, but also his cultural and philosophical contributions to bodybuilding. Then, in 2015, Muscle and Fitness magazine gave him perhaps the greatest title of all. Zane was voted the holder of the best physique of all time. That recognition symbolized the timeless impact of his image and philosophy. Even among generations of bulkier athletes, his body remained the ultimate standard of harmony. What makes this legacy even more powerful is that it isn't tied only to records or medals. Zane's name is connected to a philosophy that inspires not just bodybuilders, but anyone seeking balance between body and mind. His example proves that perfection isn't only about how much, but also about how. Even past the age of 80, Frank Zane continues to be a living example of discipline and consistency. He still trains regularly, workouts adapted to his age, of course, but always faithful to his core principle: quality over quantity. His healthy lifestyle shows that bodybuilding can be more than just a competitive sport. It can be a philosophy of longevity. Beyond training, Zane keeps an active presence on social media and digital platforms. He shares reflections, health tips, historic photos, and even updates from his day-to-day life, connecting with younger fans who may have never seen him compete. His ability to reinvent himself and stay relevant in today's world proves his message is still alive and strong. What's remarkable is that, even after all these years, he continues to promote the idea of aesthetic bodybuilding. Zane insists that the body should aim for harmony, proportion, and balance, instead of chasing extreme size. That mindset resonates especially in classic physique, where many athletes openly cite him as their biggest inspiration. These days, his routine goes beyond lifting weights. He preaches balance between body, mind, and spirit, something that's been part of his philosophy since the beginning. For Zane, it's not enough to just move iron. You have to meditate, take care of your mental health, and stay disciplined in every aspect of life. That holistic vision makes him admired not just as an athlete, but as a mentor for living well. Even decades off stage, his image remains timeless. A quick glance at his old photos makes it obvious why his body is still called sculptural today. And when you compare his philosophy to the direction bodybuilding has taken, it's clear his message never stopped being relevant. And that brings us to the end of Frank Zane's incredible journey, a true master of aesthetics in bodybuilding. His story reminds us that being a champion isn't just about the size of your muscles, but about discipline, proportion, and the ability to inspire across generations. Zane proved that body, mind, and spirit can move together in the pursuit of excellence. And that's why his legacy lives on to this day. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button down below. It really helps the channel grow and lets us bring more inspiring stories like Frank Zane's. Also, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our new content. And if you'd like to support the channel even more, consider becoming a member. You'll not only strengthen this project, but also gain access to exclusive content and a closer connection with our community. Now I want to hear from you. What impressed you most about Frank Zane's story? Was it his ability to overcome much bigger rivals, his philosophy of training and nutrition, or the legacy he left for the sport? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to keep this conversation going. Oh, and don't leave just yet. On the end screen, I'll leave another special video I know you'll enjoy. Click there and keep joining us on this journey through bodybuilding and the stories that shape generations. That's it for today, folks. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.